I would like to acknowledge and pay my respect to traditional owners of the land on which we meet, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. Well, good afternoon to you all. Today we are launching the annual Pro Bono Salary Survey for 2019. But first I would like to introduce you to our team and our team of the ENFP Strategic Alliance. My name is Kim Calloway and I'm Head of Clients and Markets at HLB Man Judd. We have Daryl Swindells, we have Simon James, we have Mariana Von Lucan, we have John Raphael, and we have Mark Simonson. Only new, we'll train him, won't take long. And then from the Commonwealth Bank we have Yvette Flynn, we have Blake Sinclair, we have David Wilson. Thank you so much. Karen Marlab is the founder of Pro Bono Australia. And unfortunately today she cannot be with us here. She has sent a representative from Pro Bono Australia. So Chloe Tucker, would you like to put up your hand? And Chloe is the marketing manager. But we have a few words from Karen.
Hi, my name is Karen Marlab and I'm founder and CEO of Pro Bono Australia. Next year, Pro Bono Australia will be 20 years old. I find that very hard to believe, but you'll be hearing more about that next year in 2020. Pro Bono Australia continues to grow and to serve the interests of Australia's growing social economy. We're very proud of the fact that we've measured our own impact and we come out at 11 to 1 as measured by Ernst & Young a few years ago. We currently have 60,000 subscribers to our news services and 1 million people using our website every year. Our jobs board continues to thrive and is fast becoming the place in the sector to post sector jobs, which we're very proud of. One of the reasons that I think we've been around for so long and probably have that many people using our services is that we've always been very collaborative and have dealt with a whole series of wonderful trusted partners. HLB Man Judd is one of those partners. They've been with us on the salary survey for 5 years, and Hester is also another one of those partners, as is Andrew Beveridge, who's presenting to you today. The sector survey is obviously an incredibly important piece of research. Paying your people the right remuneration is absolutely vital to any successful organisation. The sector survey, the Pro Bono Australia sector survey, is the largest of its kind in Australia, and the data set provides a really robust data set that you can trust and that your board can trust and that your C-suite executives can trust. So I'll leave it now and hand over to Andrew and the wonderful Kim Calloway and her team to present the results of the 2019 sector survey. And I'm so sorry I can't be with you. I'm stuck in a retreat, a board retreat, another strategy board retreat, which I will actually enjoy. But I leave it to you for now. I'll see you soon.
I would now like to introduce Andrew Beveridge, and I'd like to congratulate him on his new brand. So Andrew Beveridge was Beveridge Consulting. He's now Leadership Today. And as Head of Marketing, I know that a dot can cost anywhere between $5 and 15 million.
Yeah, that's it.
So I would like to think that you have to pay the 15 million and possibly not the $5. Andrew Beveridge is a psychologist and facilitator specialising in the science of leadership and employment engagement. Andrew has been consulting in remuneration with the NFP organisation for 15 years. Andrew is the co-author of the Pro Bono NFP Salary Survey. Andrew's presentation will cover the results and the findings. I'd like to welcome Andrew. So sorry.
No, thank you kindly, Kim. That's great. Welcome everyone. Fantastic to be back. This is the way I mark my year, is actually by this event. I was just saying to Kim, it's always a highlight to turn up and see that another year is over, a new one's just begun, as the famous singer once said. Before we launch into the survey, I do want to just thank those who partner with us. As Karen mentioned, HLB Manager has been a great partner in the survey for a number of years now, and a great supporter of the work that is done there. Hester as well in supporting the survey, so we do really appreciate that. Also for the sponsors for today, so Commonwealth Bank, I do my banking with Commonwealth Bank, so I really look forward to that 0.25% improvement in my rates for mentioning that. Fantastic to get that. Got that on the video, that's great. We are going to be walking through some of the results and also how to use the salary survey today. It's not just about the dollars and cents, so to be honest, I don't get that excited about the dollars side. Clearly I get excited when I get paid, as each of you do. But it's less about the financial side of things for me in terms of the dollars and cents. But thinking more broadly about motivation and how we engage people. So we always try to tackle not just what trends are going on in the market in terms of salaries, but what that might mean for people as well. In terms of the salary surveys, the list of some of the jobs that we look at there, we've got 26 roles, over 1,400 individuals who contribute salary data. There won't be a test on this later, but it is just highlighting that there are a range of roles from chief executives through to general management, operations, research, grants, a whole range of roles. So there's going to be something in there that will cover off a fair chunk of the roles in your organisation as well. And I think in that sense it's quite a unique survey with the range of coverage that we see there. I'm going to talk about how to use the survey. It's a really interesting question. I got the question from Pro Bono Australia this year. They said, you know what happens? We sell the salary survey to people, and then occasionally they'll ring up and say, so what do I do next? What do I do next? So I'm here to tell you the what you do next bit. That's part of the story. So I'm going to put up a table that you will not be able to read, but it's really a placeholder to talk about how to use this data. For those who are closer to the front, you've just saved yourself a portion of paying for the salary survey for your general manager salaries. For those at the back, they got really interested now. To give you a bit of a sense of what do we do with the salary survey once we've got it. The first step is really to think about what's the kind of role that I'm benchmarking and what's going to be the best match for me. So of those 26 roles in the survey, which roles are closest to that? And there might be one or two roles. So I'll give you an example. I was working with an organisation recently. They had a grants manager role, but it wasn't applying for grants, it was receiving grants. Sorry, it wasn't applying for grants, it was actually giving grants out to organisations, so a little bit of a different flavour to it. So we're able to find another role, a services manager role, that actually lined up a bit more closely. So it's important not just to go by the job title, but try to find a couple of roles in there that are closest. The second thing is that the size of the organisation makes a huge difference, and not just at the CEO and general manager level. We actually find that organisational size has a flow-on impact to salaries right down through the organisation. So even the entry-level roles in an organisation, if you're in a larger not-for-profit, they will typically get paid more than in a smaller not-for-profit. But what you definitely find is when you get up to the CEO and general manager levels, that's when it really starts to ratchet up and vary based on the size of the organisation. So we look at that in a couple of ways. In this particular case, the one that I would normally use is the operating budget. Now, operating budget's kind of a quasi-measure of organisational size and complexity. We know it's not the only story in town, but it does give you a bit of a sense of like with like organisations. It's then about picking which salary measure do we want to use. Not-for-profits, for whatever reason, they love base salary, get really excited about base salary measures, so we include base salary, but we also include total package figures as well. So if you want to roll in things like superannuation and other benefits, you can look at it either way. And then I get people to start with the midpoint of the market, which is a median figure. So all of that goes to say there will be a box there somewhere on those tables that applies most closely to you. So in this case, if you're an organisation with between 2 to 10 million turnover, you want to look at total remuneration for general managers, and you want to look at the midpoint of the market, $133,024 is the going rate that we saw in the past year there. So in terms of dollars, that's how we use the survey. We also give you other figures around location, so which state you're based in, the level of tax relief that you might get there in terms of the discretionary and reduced tax exemptions that come with that as well. All those figures are provided, but I do say the biggest impact is really that size of organisation, so I encourage clients to look at that. And it's important to not just match the market. So that figure doesn't say, oh great, we've got to go out and pay everyone that overnight. It's a piece of data, like any other data. We do actually find these figures fluctuate a little bit year from year as people start contributing data or stop contributing data, so they can shuffle around a little bit. That median is a bit more stable though, so that's why I tend to use that as the measure. And I would say you only have to do a more formal process every 2 to 3 years. We are, if you're on the funding side, blessed by very low wage growth at the moment. If you're the rest of us, maybe not so blessed at the moment by the lack of wage growth. But what that means is that we can let things run for a couple of years, do some smaller adjustments, and then come back and do some more detailed benchmarking. But we live in a world, and perhaps you can relate to this, you might have heard this, this acronym before, VUCA, the VUCA world. It's kind of taken off in management consulting firms and business strategy houses. And for those who want the slides, we'll be sending those around post the presentation as well. If you're madly taking down notes and trying to eat simultaneously, we'll save you from that. It's an expression that came out of, in the 1980s, out of the US Army War College, who were trying to describe what's the world like in this post-Cold War period. So when we went to war in the past, we'd wear uniforms, we had rules, we knew who was on what team, and away we went. Didn't say it meant it was a pleasant environment, but it was a bit more predictable. They would say that post-Cold War, Cold War, things changed. So they've gone from being predictable to being more volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous. And people more recently have said, you know what, that's not just in wartime, that actually applies to how we operate in business as well. And if I give you an example of that, I was privileged enough to work with a couple of disability service providers recently. We'll probably have a few in the room as well today. And if you look at the changes in funding and what's happened, almost every aspect of how their organisations operate has changed in the last 24 months, effectively. So with the shift to NDIS, they've moved from block funding, so government turns up and says, here's a block of funds, we'd like you to spend it on these kinds of things. The organisation says, that's fantastic, we'll see you again next year. I know it's a bit more complex than that. And away they go and deliver and report back to government on how that's going. So that's my understanding of the block funding environment, slightly oversimplified. But where these organisations have moved to, and depending on which part of that sector they fall into, is into individual funding. So I've gone from having one customer, effectively, the government, who's giving me money and I need to keep them happy, to suddenly we've got all these clients that we're servicing and we've either got to collect the money ourselves from these people or account for it back to all of these individuals. So that impacts on their financial systems. If they're collecting that directly from the families, and for some services they might actually be doing that, or from the individual, that means that people may choose not to pay. And so if they don't pay, suddenly I've got to go and chase up the funds. I didn't have to do that with the government. I just sent an email and said, where's the money? And they fixed it up. So suddenly they've gone from an environment that was actually relatively predictable. We knew what was going on for the next 12 months, to a very volatile environment of, well, how many clients have we got? Should we expand our services to capitalise on this other area? And making big shifts in terms of their strategy as well with that. Their IT systems, their design in their organisation and marketing, so suddenly they're having to market their services and compete against other providers. All these things that they didn't have to do in the past. And so that's led to this environment which feels much less certain. It actually requires more out of our leaders as well. And so, not surprisingly, the disability sector is one of the sectors that is paying CEOs a little bit more money than what we see in other parts because of that increased complexity that we're seeing there. I show this graph every year and I just add another few dots on the end. It's fantastic, really simple for me to do. So for those who've been playing along for the last few years, you'll recognise this graph. It's of two measures that the Australian Bureau of Stats produce each year. Actually, each quarter they roll these out. The bottom, the top line there, that red line, is kind of in a downward trajectory, is the wage price index. So the ABS goes out, they sample about 80,000 jobs each quarter and they say, what are you paying them this quarter? They collect all that data back, some boffins crunch some numbers and they come up with a wage price index. If you've been Following the election campaign, that figure is actually really important. And even from the back, you'd notice that it used to be relatively high, and it's dropped down. It's nearly halved. And so we are sitting at a period now where wage growth is at historical and record lows. It's blipped up a little bit, which is great, but we are sitting at 2.3% at the moment, and by any measure that's not a fantastic level of wage growth. If you look at the consumer price index, that's the black line, it goes all over the place. So you get a hurricane going through Queensland somewhere, knocking out the banana plantations, that's going to impact that. You get all sorts of things that can impact on consumer price index. Still find a lot of not-for-profits go, we just give people the CPI increase, or they talk about the CPI increase. It's not a great thing to link your wages to, because as you'll see from that graph, it's got really nothing much to do with actual wage growth. It just talks about cost of living. But the other thing you'll see is that cost of living and wage growth used to be quite separate, and now it's a very close context. So what does that mean for people? When we sample people and ask them, how do you feel about your pay? Close enough to 50%, 48% of people think they're underpaid at the moment. That can't be correct. You can't have that many people who are actually underpaid. So you're going to end up with maybe a third underpaid, a third paid about right, and a third overpaid. When we asked people about that, we actually had 2 or 3% of people who thought they were overpaid. They may have been intoxicated during that webinar, I think. Hit the wrong button. But we have a lot of people who feel like they're underpaid, and so they're actually feeling quite ripped off. I went to a presentation by Bernard Salt, the well-known demographer, looks at demographics in Australia. He posed a really interesting question around what is Australia's core values at the moment. If you had to really tie it down, a few people sort of said mateship, and he goes, yeah. And he said, actually, I think our core value at the moment is don't mess with my lifestyle. So as Australians, the one thing that binds us together as a nation is don't mess with my lifestyle. This is a you're messing with my lifestyle graph. I'm not getting as much money as I used to. Cost of living is sitting around the same level. I'm not getting ahead. And by the way, my house is going down in value, and that was my plan. So my plan is shattered. Got some people in the aged care sector in the room who can help us out with all of that, thankfully. When we look at wage growth and we ask not-for-profit CEOs to forecast their wage growth, and they've been pretty accurate. So when we look at how it plays out the following year, they're not too bad at doing this. The median wage growth for the coming year, according to those CEOs, is 3%. So they're heading a little bit higher than what we see in the general market. Interestingly enough, CEO salaries, when we looked at them versus our previous survey, went up 3%. So that's uncanny. Do you know how much general manager salaries went up over the same period? Absolutely nothing. So that would suggest to us that the CEOs have seen a bit of a movement. And look, it's to be honest, a bit all over the place when we look at different roles in our survey. There's different reasons why that might be the case. But there's not really any roles in there that are seeing substantial movements forward, and that would support the case that we are experiencing that low salary growth in the sector as well. And for those who are, and the bulk of the people in this room are government funded, it's not like your funding is going ahead at leaps and bounds either. So what's the impact on people? We find that 80% of people see their work as demanding. Again, you might go, who's that other 20%? They're out there somewhere. But we've got people saying, my job's actually really demanding. Based on all of that context, I'm not getting paid as much as I'd like, pay's not going forward. We've got almost half, 46%, who say they're often experiencing negative work-related stress. So stress isn't a bad thing, it's not a killer, but negative stress is. If you've got constant stress, and you're going, this is impacting on my life, and that's how I would read that negative work-related stress. That's not a good picture. And in the sector, we're seeing almost half of people are experiencing that. And we've got almost 20%, so 19% are considering leaving in the next 12 months. So what's that lead to? We find that figure is fairly uncanny in terms of actual turnover. When you speak to organisations and you do that in the employee survey and go, you're thinking about leaving in the next 12 months, and 10% say, yes, I am. You know what their turnover figure ends up being? Pretty close to 10%. So if we then go this as a sector-wide perspective, what that suggests to me is people are sitting there going, well, I'm not getting ahead here, maybe the grass is greener somewhere else. And so my prediction there would be that we're going to see people shuffling around jobs quite a bit in the coming 12 months. That's not the good news bit. We'll get to the good news bit in a while, hey? So as we split apart the data, we can actually think about three, what I would describe as workplace experiences. What's it feel like in the workplace? If we take that stressed group, that 46%, and just label them as the stressed, they're people who are experiencing that negative work-related stress quite frequently. We've got the stretched, so that's 80%. Who are feeling like their work is demanding, it's requiring things out of them. Obviously there's an overlap, you can be both stressed and stretched in that picture. But what was really interesting is to split out this third group, which I called the strong, for want of a better word. I workshopped a whole lot of words, that's the best I could come up with. And these are people who their work is demanding, but they're not experiencing negative work-related stress. Okay, so this is hard, but I'm not feeling like it's having a negative impact on me. And interestingly enough, the flow on impact of those three things is quite different in terms of their engagement and how they connect with the organisation. Again, you'll see this in the slides when they're sent around. I'm going to look at the stressed first of all. So these are the people who are frequently experiencing negative work-related stress. The big figure there is their overall employee engagement 17% lower than the rest. Than people who say, I'm not actually feeling that stressed. Their willingness to recommend the organisation 24% lower. So if you've got people going, feels really stressful around here, they're not likely to go around going, this is a great place to work, you should come here. You know, I'm up all night, I wake up feeling sick, it's great. Which makes sense. But it also flows through into things like pride in the organisation. They're actually not as proud to work there, their job satisfaction is lower, they're less likely to stay. And even their motivation is lower as well. So that's an interesting group. I actually looked at a fourth group, which is people who don't feel stretched and don't feel stressed. And you go, that's the Australian dream, isn't it? You turn up to a job where it's not hard, it's no stress. Their employee engagement's also negative. It's actually not an enjoyable experience to not be stretched and not stressed. So there's something in this being stretched that's actually positive. And what we saw when we looked at the stretched group, so these are the people saying my work's demanding, their engagement's actually up versus the rest of that group. So our largest not-for-profits, it gets down to 2/3, so 66%. And I actually think that's where the problem is. So remember I said you get paid more when you're in larger organisations. So fewer women are in general management positions in larger organisations, and we found the same for CEO positions. You know, vast majority of CEOs of smaller not-for-profits are women, and you find that drops off markedly as you head down through those figures. I think that's actually part of the answer is how do we address that, and that's probably where boards and CEOs come in. A couple of things to talk about from there, and just in 5 or so minutes and then we'll have some questions. Leadership effectiveness is really critical in this. If we step up through this diagram, which I think talks about how leaders produce results, at the bottom we've got what I call follower behaviours. This is what people are actually doing on the ground when they're delivering results. That's where we get our results from. If you step back from that, you want aligned motivation, is what I would call it, where you've got people heading in the same direction as the organisation. I'm interested in the purpose of this place. I've internalised that. So Desi and Ryan's research would say you can take something that's really meaningful that an organisation is doing, you can actually get it inside yourself and make it part of you. That is driven by leadership styles, the behaviours that a leader uses. And if we want to get deep for our day today, then that's actually driven by the leader's feelings and emotions, their emotional intelligence, their awareness of themselves drives that. My first job was working for Target. Remember Target? They used to have a garden department at the particular Target I worked in. I was in customer service security. Pretty impressive job title. What do you reckon that was doing? It was checking bags. So I was 15 years old, year 9, bag checker on the garden department at Target. And it was a fascinating place to work. We'd have people try to make quick escapes. They come in the front door, grab something, and then try to run out through the garden department. So they got the little burly 15-year-old kid to try to tackle them to the ground on the way out. And we had a guy, sometimes refunds would come to us. So people would bring things in and go, this thing's broken. I'd say, you got a receipt? Yes, you do. This guy turned up one day with a stick, basically. A twig, with a ball of plastic on the end of it. And I went, what is this? And anyway, I get the receipt. And written on that receipt is bare-rooted lemon tree. Bare-rooted lemon tree. Now, if you don't know what a bare-rooted lemon tree is, it's basically a cheap way of shipping plants around. You knock all the soil off, You put it in a little bag, don't last very long, you put them in stores, sell them, people go home and plant them. This guy didn't plant them. The date on this lemon tree was 3 months before that. He brought it home, put it in the corner of his garage, and it had died. Now, the audacity of the guy, 3 months later, he brings the twig in with a bag and goes, I want a refund on this. And I go, why? He goes, it's dead. Now, why do I share that story? Because I think that's how sometimes we look at motivation. You know, did he create the right environment for that tree? Probably not. Did he feed it? Did he water it? Did he set up the conditions for success? No, he didn't. He took it home and put it in the dark in the corner. I think sometimes as leaders, we go, this person's just not motivated, they're not motivated. But we're setting them up in the equivalent of dropping them in the corner of the garage in the dark and just hoping that they'll figure it out themselves. So if you think about what are the conditions, what can we do as leaders, what we don't want to do is we don't want to be directing. So directing is a leadership style that we often fall back on when we're concerned, when things are out of control, when we're feeling like we're sitting in that VUCA environment. It's great for getting task clarity and control, but there's a whole lot of shortcomings with that because people, they'll do it while you're there, but they're not going to be motivated to do other things. So if you're just telling people what to do, bossing them around, I'm seeing some people looking around the room a bit nervously, maybe their boss is in the room doing this thing to them at the moment, so just pay really close attention to the drink in front of you. But it's really kind of directions, but no sense of purpose. So sometimes as Australians, we opt for the great Australian leadership style of avoiding. I don't want to be a jerk, so I'll just sort of step back and not lead people. They'll figure it out themselves, I'll hire some good people, let's just let them go. And then, you know, if they don't do a good job, I'll just do it myself, so I won't delegate to them. I don't want to make their life a hassle. That gives people lots of freedom, but it's freedom for what? Like, they don't know what they're working towards. So what you're much better doing is, there's 4 leadership styles that I'd say are really important just in the last couple of minutes here. One is inspiring, and that's really setting up that clear vision and purpose, providing people with broader clarity about where we're going, what we're doing, and defining roles in relation to that as well. Developing is really important, where we actually focus on building people's capability, coaching them, helping them to understand what they can do to actually improve and grow as well. Discussing skills and capability, you know, having big, we actually ask people what they want to develop and how they want to improve. Connecting, so how can we connect people with other people in the organisation? Desi and Ryan's research, really interesting. It's not just that people are motivated by being supported, they actually really like and are motivated by supporting others. We actually wired in a way where we like to help other people out. I know that seems a bit hard to believe as you kind of walk around Wynyard Station or something, but we are wired in a way where we want to support and collaborate with people as well. Delegating, and this is really, once you've got those other things in place and you can set things up, it's important to be able to delegate down things and delegate meaningful responsibilities to people as well. And so I've got a quick self-assessment. If you went to my website, and as Kim pointed out, yeah, that .today prefix is quite expensive, but worth the money if you want to get yourself a web address with .today in it. So if you go to that and sign, it can send you a self-assessment there that you can work through and look at your own leadership styles as a way forward on that as well.
So our next speaker I'd like to introduce is Rachel McLennan, CEO and co-founder for People for Purpose. People for Purpose exists to support individuals and organisations clarify their purpose and connect to it to create social impact. And prior to establishing People for Purpose, Rachel was founding CEO of Australian Philanthropic Services, or APS, born out of Social Ventures Australia, that was established to increase the number of private and public ancillary funds in Australia. Please welcome Rachel.
Thanks, Yvette. I too would like to acknowledge that beneath the carpet and concrete, the land is, was and always will be Aboriginal land. And if you haven't Googled Barangaroo the lady, you don't know anything about her, she was quite fabulous, and I would suggest that you take a look. She's responsible for the creation of these wonderful buildings. I just wanted to provide some context around why I'm here. I'm really excited and grateful to Kim for inviting me, because our soapbox issues are clarity of purpose and great leadership, and we bang on about them all day long. This is that I do see that I and the team at People for Purpose come to you from a position of, excuse me, privilege and experience. And what I mean by that is we are privileged to have worked alongside non-executive directors, chairs and CEOs of organisations in the sector for a really long time. And before that I was privileged to have watched the birth and growth of 50 private ancillary funds. So we've seen how organisations receive funding, how organisations accept funding, and what the leadership responsibility around that is. I wanted to ask you all to think about for a second, on a scale of 1 to 10, how aligned to purpose you believe the organisation that you represent is in terms of the people inside that business. And I mean everyone from volunteers through the management team and executive team right up to the directors and the CEOs, chairs, sorry. Because that purpose alignment is something that is quite simple, and my disclaimer for this presentation today is that what I have to offer you is not rocket science. It's as simple as reminding you to brush your teeth every day. But it's really important, and sometimes we overlook some of these really simple measures and get on with the day-to-day of delivering social impact to solve some of the complex social and environmental problems that we're trying to solve. So leading on from what Andrew talked about, and perhaps this should say strong and not stretch, but this is digging a little deeper into how to create operating environments that do create that stretch and not the stress for people. And as I said, the reason that People for Purpose exists, far better off in terms of happiness generally. You'll represent your employer regardless of what they do better. You'll be happier in terms of family. So it might be quite interesting. I'll buy you a book.
Oh, thank you.
So I want to talk to you first of all about individual purpose. And sometimes again we don't address this. Is it clear? Do individuals inside the business know why they're there? I'm going to try and give you some examples in each of these sections, but I do what I do because my mum was given to the Salvation Army when she was 15 months old. She was abandoned by her parents. Someone called, handed over the child, and she was there for 16 years. Now, I don't necessarily wish to work for the Salvation Army, but I did choose to sit on the board of an organisation called the National Centre for Childhood Grief, who provides support to children whose mum or dad have died. Because I have lived experience through my own mother of what it would be like not to have parents. And for my own 3 children, I'd love to know that they had somewhere like the National Centre for Childhood Grief to go should something happen to my husband or I. Now, we in People for Purpose call this proximity factor. Sometimes an individual's purpose is too close. We worked with Cure Brain Cancer for a long time. We had lots of people who have had brain cancer or have experienced brain cancer wanting to come and work and solve the problem. And it was very difficult because they were very, very close. So what do we understand of an individual's purpose as they're coming into our business? Do we even test it? Do we ask non-executive directors why they're there? Do we ask volunteers why they're there? And is it in balanced against the organisation's purpose? Is it aligned? Again, many organisations that we've worked with exist for a certain reason, but the people who work inside the business believe nuances of language mean that they're there either for the family or for the people who are being affected by it, or for the community around. It's really important when you're trying to deliver your strategy that that clarity of purpose is understood and is communicated and is aligned. And is it across every level of the organisation? Is it reviewed? Same with organisational purpose. Again, we've worked with boards where we've interviewed 12 directors and asked them what the purpose of the organisation is and had 12 different responses. Tiny, tiny differences in language, tiny, tiny differences, but they can make significant impacts on strategy. And I'll give you a really cute example. There was an organisation down in Melbourne that we worked with who provide drama courses for homeless people. And they were trying to decide whether or not their latest production would be toured. Half of the board felt like they were a production company competing against all the other production companies like the Melbourne Theatre Company. And the other half of the organisation, in terms of its board, felt like they were an organisation that supported that community of homeless people. So why would they tour it? If they were not touring, they wouldn't be there to support those people. And until we had clarified organisational purpose, which took a really long time, we could never agree on the organisation and strategy in terms of where it's heading. Is it known? Do people know what it is? Is it reviewed? How often do we have, at governance level or board level, reviews of our purpose? And is it beneficiary-centric? Do we actually go back and ask the people of the environmental problem that we're looking at? Do we actually look at it in detail at periodic points? Lindy and I are currently working with an organisation who work in the disability space. That particular organisation's beneficiaries have changed they're now living longer, more healthier lives, but the business was built to support those people who had that disability when they were sort of between 0 and 20 and now living beyond. So do we go back and understand what the beneficiaries need? Governance. Now these are taken from the AICD's governance principles, and actually I brought a copy. Would you mind holding that up, Jenny? Jenny's actually here from the AICD. You probably all know that the Australian Institute of Company Directors are fairly committed to supporting the sector. They wrote, let me just grab that because it's really interesting. So this was originally written back in 2012, the not-for-profit governance principles, and obviously every organisation can access them, but they were reviewed last year. And I would encourage you to look at this, not necessarily just from non-executive directors. This is not about the boards. This is about everyone inside the organisation understanding and contributing to these principles. We often ask, if there was a Royal Commission that looked at the for-purpose sector, could you as an organisation prove that you have spent the dollars well to create the social impact that you exist to create for all the tax benefits that you have been given? So if we quickly look at some of these principles, and again, this is not just about governance, being clear on purpose is obviously number one, and that's new. It wasn't number one in 2013. And having a strategy. Principle 2, in terms of roles and responsibilities, doesn't just relate to the board. It relates to clarity of organisational roles and responsibilities. And again, we work with organisations where you have a CEO and a COO or a general manager, but there is no clear delineation between who does what. It's kind of assumed and not reviewed. And so these are simple measures that you can take to help your organisation deliver and create that environment. Principle number 3, board composition. And I have a little soapbox issue here too around board composition. Yes, it's important to look through the filter of skills matrices and having someone on the board who represents legal and represents marketing. But is it actually attached to your strategy? Have you actually said, we're an organisation who are going to deliver this, and in terms of, or being able to do that, we need different skills on our board, like someone who can represent the stakeholder, someone who understands technology, someone who understands fundraising. It's quite amazing how many for-purpose organisations actually need to fundraise to deliver their work, and they have no one on the board who actually understands the science and art of fundraising. Effectiveness, again, this is not just board effectiveness, but team effectiveness. Another quick example, worked with a board who work in the Indigenous space, providing access to sport and education for Indigenous communities. And I asked the board why they were there and if they wanted to be there. And at the end of the day, all directors did not want to be there. They were there because the Commissioner for Aboriginal Affairs was the chair and he had asked them to be there and they said yes. I then interviewed the head of programs, this 23-year-old guy who was bouncing off the walls about the impact that they had had and how many kids come to school and how excited they are to be contributing and committing to their communities. And I said to the head of programs, have you ever been to a board meeting? And he hadn't. So we actually took the entire board out to community to connect them. It was a board effectiveness point. It made them incredibly effective and connected to the organisation. And 12 months later, we went back, all the board members were still there, everybody understood why they were there, and everyone was really excited about the contribution they were making. Risk management, again, everyone's responsibility, but I give you another example. I sat on the board, as I mentioned, of the National Centre for Childhood Grief, and we were in a suburban East Denison, we are in a Denison Street suburban, but there was a proposal to build a daycare centre next door, and we were just going to let it happen, except for the fact that had been overlooked. That there was a single parent coming to drop the kids off for counselling, and next door there were going to be 1 or 2 parents dropping kids off to daycare and picking them up every day. Now, we didn't actually necessarily have to do anything about it, but one of the counsellors said this potentially is a risk for some of the kids who are coming along. And it had been overlooked by the governance team, me included, but it was brought to the attention by someone inside the business. So I would encourage you to consider at all levels risk. Performance is relatively obvious. Accountability, transparency. We worked with another consulting firm to look at what makes a not-for-profit well-run. We surveyed 250 funders and NFPs and asked them, I give to the Bonados, why? They're well-run. What does well-run mean? Number 1 was clarity of purpose. Number 2 was great leadership. Number 3 was transparency. Number 21, and there were only 21, was administration costs. So what that tells me is that we don't necessarily care what you're spending your money on, as long as we know what you're spending your money on, or as long as we can see that you are transparent with us and you're telling us what you're doing with the dollars. And obviously the ACNC has made that a whole lot easier. Stakeholder engagement, back to my example in the disability space. Who are they? Are we talking to them? Are we engaging our team? Do people know who we're serving and what their actual needs are? And do we go back and continue to ask them? And conduct and compliance, are we following the law? Can I ask everyone to put their hand up really tall if they have inside their business a theory of change? 2. Can I ask you to put your hand up if you know what a theory of change is? It's really important to have a theory of change and to review it at least once a year because, again, to the point around we're creating an environment for employees to feel connected because we're not paying them millions and millions of dollars. We want them to feel like they're solving a really big problem that they obviously give a crap about. But how we do that is reliant entirely on a theory of change, and it always surprises me how many organisations don't have one of these. So it's what resources are we putting into solving this problem and what are our outputs? We have 400 kids a year come through our program. That's great, but what impact are we actually having? And then what are the greater societal impacts that are actually as a result of those impacts, of outcomes? Now, again, the survey that we did, we asked NFPs why they don't measure their impact. 7 out of 10 don't. The number one reason why they don't is that it's too hard. But actually, it's as simple as asking questions of the beneficiaries. What do you want out of working with us? How would you feel in terms of better at the end of it, and creating opportunities for that to actually occur? It can be fairly straightforward. So a stretched environment, for me, means understanding all of these things. It's also leadership. It's all of the above. It's clear on the organisational purpose, aligning individual purpose, knowing good governance and contributing to good governance. There are lots of things that you can do. Those who are in the executive and at lower levels of the business, you can share stories about what's happening at the coalface, share stories about what's happening in your fundraising activities. Beyond just providing non-executive directors with reporting, but actually sharing stories. And sometimes that can be done quite informally. Sometimes it's as simple as connecting with a senior executive or a non-executive over coffee to share some of this work. Testing your own purpose. So do you kind of go back and reflect on it and understand your organisation's purpose and testing the alignment? Understanding your ecosystem within an organisation. So if you're the head of marketing, do you feel like you have the responsibility of understanding those inside your business to understand how that connects back to their purpose? Because some of the organisations in the sector are quite large, obviously, and so it's very difficult to get these filtration levels down, but you can influence your own ecosystem, again, by understanding, asking the question, why do you work here? What makes it happy for you? What makes it feel like you're delivering the impact piece? And then, questioning what the organisation's impact is, perhaps from your CEO or from your non-executive directors, questioning what the process is to understand theories of change, asking questions. As I said at the beginning, this is not rocket science. I think to create a stretched environment is quite simple, and some of it is existing in some of the organisations that you represent, but for many it's overlooked because it is so simple. So I would ask you just to take a minute perhaps to just consider one thing that you might be able to do inside your organisations, based off some of the information that you've heard from Andrew and I, that you can actually implement, that you do believe will create or work towards creating the stretch and not the stress. Thank you.
Lovely.
Our next speaker is Mariana von Lucken from HLB, and she's going to talk to you about some of the impacts on your employment, of the cost of what you're paying your people. Mariana?
Great, thank you. I thought I was talking about something else, but okay, I'll go with that. Now, just thank you. Well, mate. I just wanted to start off with just following on. I think you thought you were going to get the Easter money, weren't you? I know, you got the 4-year-old, so sorry about that. My purpose for being here right now, you might ask, is really about keeping you compliant and safe and minimising risk. How do I do that? Well, from a HLB perspective, I do tax, but as you know, not-for-profits don't pay tax, but they do look at, in some instances, paying fringe benefit tax. Now you're all going to go to sleep now on me. That's okay. I'm not going to drum on. But the main thing is just to keep in mind, not everyone here is in the finance. Some of you in the room are HR. Very mixed crowd. But it is important because where is the first port of call when you negotiate a contract with someone? HR. HR is negotiating the contract. So they're saying this is your salary and these are your benefits. Now there's different types of organisations in the rooms. There's charities, there's exempt, FBT exempt charities, and there's FBT rebatable charities. So really the two. Now for the FBT exempt charities, as you know, you've got those caps which you say when you're drawing someone in, here's your salary, and also part of that is this beautiful cap where you don't pay any tax on and you're not assessed on. It's fantastic. The only thing that I've observed in some instances, in some organisations, HR organises that, and finance over here is doing the fringe benefit return. And fringe benefit return is basically, so for example, a car's been provided, that's in the contract. Over here, they're working out the calculation. The cap, HR's worked out the cap. And over here they're saying, well, we don't need to worry about it because HR's got it under control. And then any other benefits that might come within the organisation, HR doesn't really worry about. It's really finance, and that's where they have to work out fringe benefits. So I'm just saying is that sometimes making sure the two talk. Now I'm sure all your organisations are doing the right thing. They're all talking, HR's talking to the finance team. So what my role is I come into organisations and help them and look at, say, ask those questions. These are your caps. These are for FBT exempt. Rebate will also get a cap, but treat it a bit differently. These are your caps. Are you exceeding those caps? Now, if anyone exceeds the cap, that means a return, fringe benefit, this is keeping compliant, has to be lodged for all of them. Only paying FBT on that excess, but has to be lodged. So there's the compliant, minimising risk. Because if you haven't done it, imagine somebody comes in, has a look, someone like from the ATO, tax office, so I've got a bit of a cold, so I don't sound the same. A bit nasal. Comes in, has a look, goes back through 4 years and says, oh, look, by the way, you've exceeded your cap in all these, and you owe this much fringe benefit tax and interest and penalties. We might be able to remit some of the penalties, but not the interest. And you thought everything was under control. And that can cost you quite a bit. So here's where the minimising risk. So it's just being aware of that. The other thing is entertainment's always an interesting one, isn't it? The FBT exempt get meal cards, part of their cap. Again, it's part of their, what's it called, reportable fringe benefit, because it's salary sacrificed. And that meal entertainment, we know how to treat it. But there's entertainment that goes on within an organisation that's outside of the cap. That's what I'm talking about here. So entertainment defined as food, drink, recreation, social events. Accommodation provided maybe for that entertainment. So there's two sort of types of entertainment I always think. If you think about it, it's food and drink, and then the recreation, the golf, and all those kind of interesting things. I'm not interested in golf, by the way. You need to look at the circumstances when you're looking to see if something's entertainment. And you ask these questions, what, why? It kind of makes sense, right? Now, if it's not entertainment, no worries. But if it is entertainment, you have to consider the big differences between a for-profit and a not-for-profit that was highlighted. And I've seen, and some people are a little confused about it, so I just wanted to just bring it out here in the group. So again, if you're HR, you can go to sleep for a while because it's probably not something you're packaging your meals and everything, and that's all good. It's more from the finance team. They're looking at, okay, do we do this social event? Are we going to chuck this Christmas party or not, really? Do we need to? Do we need to spend the money? A for-profit would go, yeah, let's spend the money, under $300, we're fine, we get an exemption for FBT, may not get a tax deduction for it, okay, may not get the GST, but so what, everyone's happy. For a tax-exempt body, because you are tax-exempt, you're not paying tax, it's a little bit different. You actually still have to pay. You don't get this minor and infrequent when it's entertainment. If it's not entertainment, somebody gives you a bunch of flowers. You can use the under 300. But if it's entertainment, and when I say what is entertainment, you have to go back to this definition. It's quite convoluted. There's lots of rulings, all exciting things. Darren wanted me to give you some sections, but I said no. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to hold myself back.
Thank God.
Thank God. So tax exempt bodies, basically you have entertainment, you can't get the under 300. So if you throw a Christmas party, it doesn't meet these two criteria that sit in that box. And effectively that Christmas party will pay FBT. And that's, I'm sure a lot of organisations know that, but some maybe don't, are not clear on that. If it's not entertainment, then you can look at the under 300 claim. And that means not paying FBT on those kind of benefits, like a bunch of flowers or someone's leaving the organisation, those kind of type of benefits. So that's really, oh Daryl, no, we want to really that's all I wanted to touch on, really straightforward. What I want to do, my purpose, I have more purposes than just tax, by the way, but my purpose is really, if you're not sure, let me have a call with you, let's have a chat and see if you need to have a review of your FBT to be compliant. Thank you for listening.
I wanted to mention to you, we had a function in here recently for our not-for-profit friends, the financial part of the business on the new revenue and leases standards for not-for-profits. Now, one of the things that the finance people told us about these changes that are going to have a very, very, very big impact on a lot of organisations is that their boards aren't giving them the resources they need to figure out the answers to these questions. And there is a fair bit of work in it. How many leases do you have? What is a lease? Do you have arrangements that have been there for 75 years but maybe not written down? How are you going to collect all these? Who knows about them? Your poor finance people are trying to deal with this. I want to reach out to the CEOs and the boards here to say, talk to your finance people, find out what they need, and make sure you get something planned in your organisation for this to happen. We've sent a letter to each of the participants for them to pass on to their boards to say, here is a big long list of things that need to be done. You need to get cracking on them. For some of the not-for-profits in the room, this is already happening, and your monthly finances that you see should be being reported under these new rules, and they might be very, very different. For others, with the junior end, you've got about another 2 months before they kick in, and you've probably got about 3 months worth of work to do before that happens. So I encourage you all, talk to your people who came along to that session, or talk to one of the HLP people in the room, so that you can make sure your organisation's organised and you don't get in a huge rush, and no one likes surprises. So this will prevent you having any of those problems. What's next?
So before we do that,
Yes.
we have some time. I feel like the Daryl and Kim show.
Right.
Did you?
One of the things that Andrew talked about.
Over Daryl.
One of the things that Andrew talked about was how people use the pro bono salary survey.